Hello, my beautiful people. Welcome to the next in the series of Where Tarot and Astrology Meet with myself and the amazing Heather from Astrology with Heather. As you know, we have been walking through the Zodiac and we've been checking out the different cards and their astrological associations. I'm looking at the tarot side of things, and Heather, with her amazing sense of astrology, is giving us all of the info about that. So Heather, it's been amazing to work with you up until this point. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun, and it's been a little while, so it's awesome to get back into it. We did that webinar, which everyone should, by the way, check out the webinar, Navigating the Big Picture. Maybe you can post a link for that. But we went into the next 5 years using astrology, tarot, and numerology. Everybody loved it. We got some really great feedback, and I really feel like we dove into some very interesting stuff with that. So I feel like I have to mention it before we get into this.
For sure. We went super into it and it was amazing. Like the topics that we covered, I had an absolute blast as well. So thank you for that. There'll be a link in the description box below for that. If you haven't seen it, if you haven't checked out Heather's channel, head over to Astrology with Heather on YouTube, and your website is the same name as well, right? Awesome. Okay, so today we are looking at the Strength card. This is the next in the series. And here we have, so when we talk about the Strength card, it's got so many different broad meanings, right? And it's the same with all of the tarot cards. It's the same with the astrology. So when you look at this, you can see there is a woman or a figure there, a maiden of sorts with a Mobius veil above her head, and she's gently closing the jaws of a lion. And I could talk about this forever. Like, it's a really odd image. But when we think about the Strength card, the word itself conjures up images of, you know, strong, powerful people. And it can be that as well, for sure. But the Strength card very often talks about that inner courage, that inner fire that we have in order to push past things. It very often shows endurance as well. This is one of the things about the number 8 in tarot as well. It will show you where you have to meet a challenge. So in the 7 you would find the challenge, in the 8 you would find the endurance to push past it, or the strength for it. And when you think about the motif on this card, she's gently closing, like, how many people are going to put their hands near the mouth of a lion, right? It's might be a bit dicey. You probably wouldn't want to go in for it. But that in itself kind of speaks to this idea of inner strength, of inner courage. And when we talk about that, if I were to mention those kind of things like inner courage, inner strength, or inner authority, what sign would come to mind?
Well, I mean, that's definitely Leo. Leo is strength and courage and authority and all of that. And it's definitely something that comes from the heart and comes from within. It's like coming from a place of authenticity. So it's not like leadership, like Capricornian leadership, like follow the rules. It's like coming from a different space with Leo, for sure.
Absolutely. I love that as well, that you mentioned the authenticity. That's very much why she is wearing white, because it represents the purity of who she is. It's, you know what, there's no force here. The reason there's no color is because it represents that purity and that innocence of, I'm going to approach this from a place of all that I am and nothing more and nothing less. So I love that you mentioned the authenticity part of that. I wanted to ask this as well. So when we talk about Aries, we talk about authority, right? But what's the difference between that and sort of like a Leonine authority?
There's kind of a big difference. So with Aries is kind of like, this is what I want you to do, now do it. It's like a very telling you what to do, very directly sort of energy. Whereas Leo is more leading by example. It's more motivational. It's kind of like, I'm a leader because I am in my authenticity. I'm doing what I know is true or what I know is right. And people tend to want to follow that energy. If you think about Leos, there are a lot of Leos that are like YouTube influencers, which would be a good example of a Leo, right? They're showing what they're doing and leading by example, and other people just want to follow them because the way that they portray themselves is very exciting and very enthusiastic and very motivating. And even though it can be kind of over the top, there is an authenticity to that. That's part of who they are, right? They are that flashy, showy, like whatever it is that they're doing. And you'll even see in the astrology world, a lot of the bigger astrology YouTubers tend to have a lot of Leo energy or a strong Leo energy. And that's part of the reason why they're doing that, right? So, and actors and things like that ruled by Leo. So it's kind of a different energy. It's not like Leo isn't trying to tell you what to do. They just naturally have this air of authority, and they naturally possess this energy where you want to follow them. So much so that people who have, especially like a Leo rising sign, you'll find that they tend to be given these positions of power and authority early in life, or like people will trust them with things or give them authority that they don't necessarily deserve, or place this energy of authority on them, even if they don't necessarily do anything to warrant it. It's kind of like people just look to them as that. And that can happen at an early age before they're even like ready for it. So that can sometimes be the case with Leo risings, or sometimes even Leo sun signs, where they're looked to in that way. So it's a natural leadership versus Aries, which is like, I want this, so do it, which is a very different vibe.
Absolutely. I love that. And yeah, very true. It's one of the things that I always kind of, with this strength card as well, when you think about what she's doing there. So this card does absolutely represent Leo in the Zodiac. And whenever I see this card, like if you were to think about it in terms of like your physical body, it would rule your heart and your spine. And I know there's a crossover there, isn't there, with the sign of Leo in astrology?
Yeah, Leo rules the heart and the spine, like the spinal cord, whereas like Capricorn would rule like the back and the bones,
The
in the
bones
back.
and stuff.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, absolutely.
The other thing as well, so when I see this card, I'm very often, and I love what you mentioned there about the way that people gravitate towards the Leo energy, because she's not being forceful. So this is what I was talking about. There's like this gentle sort of courage and strength to it that has the ability to say, right, okay, well, this needs to be done, or this needs to be approached. And so I'm going to approach it just from that place of softness, or from that place of gentleness, and I'm still going to achieve the same goal. Now, when I see this as well, I very often say to people, if you imagine that your heart, like I'm sure you've read that meme that says the reason our hearts are in cages is because they're wild creatures. And I really love that because it kind of captures it perfectly. And I see the strength card as kind of saying you're effectively, what she's doing is taming the lion, but that talks about taming the energy of your heart, using that creativity to go for what it is that you truly want, with a true honesty and a persistence that's going to get you to where it is that you want to be. It's like following your own inner true north that helps you kind of see something through to completion.
Yeah. And that is such a Leo thing and such a Leo energy. Like Leo is about, yeah, authentic. Yeah. Okay. So Leo can be dramatic. They can kind of overdo it and sort of play
Naturally,
things out in that way. Yeah. They're showy, but they're authentic about it, right? It's part of who they are. It's kind of like an amplification of what's true to them and what they're feeling in their hearts. And so, yeah, absolutely. And I love that imagery with like the gentle, opening of the lion's mouth, or the, being very gentle and not necessarily forcing it. It's just kind of like guiding it to happen. I think that that's definitely a very Leo energy too.
Yeah, well, another thing as well, like through that gentle energy, that's one thing that I wanted to ask you, because I remember hearing someone mention that Leo could be, aside from the authority, there's like a mentor energy to it as well.
Like what kind of mental energy?
A mentor, sorry.
Oh, mentor. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. I mean, because they are that authority figure and they are somebody that you look up to, especially when it comes to working with children, I would say, because Leo has that association with children and that childlike energy. They tend to do well in that mentorship role with people who are younger and more naive. And so I think that that's definitely something that's associated with Leo too. And the other thing too is that like the strength card, right? That's more like emotional strength and inner strength. Yeah. And Leo, out of all the fire signs, is definitely the most emotional and the most emotionally driven and the most, I would say, nostalgic. That's like a big Leo keyword. It's kind of looking to the past and sometimes looking back to your glory days, but it's like always wanting to accomplish or to kind of go back to the way things were when they were like the best, right? So there's like this nostalgic energy, this nostalgia usually for childhood, which is that childlike energy. So they do have that connection to children, even through their own past and through their own experience, because they're always kind of ruminating on that and going back to it. And so, yeah, so I like that it's like kind of this inner emotional strength, because that is definitely a Leo thing. Out of the fire signs, definitely the most emotional. Whereas like Sagittarius and Aries doesn't have that quite so much.
Yeah, for sure. My Leo ascendant is like, that's me. Yeah, totally get it. I like what you said as well, like when you brought the idea of the children into it, because it makes total sense. If she's taming the lion, and kids are kind of like a feral energy, right? So giving them that sort of track to take all of that vibrant, youthful energy, but to do something with it rather than just run around screaming in one spot for 5 minutes. Okay, awesome. So I have a few questions for you about this. Leo and the Sun and the King. What is in there?
Leo and the Sun and the King. Well, when you think about the Sun, so Leo, it makes sense that Leo is ruled by the Sun, because yes, Leo is very show-offy. Leo needs recognition, right? Leo needs to get attention and recognition for their authenticity, for the things that they're providing and doing and the way that they're showing up in the world. They need attention. That's something that's part of, or at least recognition for what it is that they're doing, right? That is a big Leo trait. It's not that they're doing it necessarily for the recognition, but they need that feedback to feel satisfied. And the Sun, if you think about it, is the center of the solar system. And so everything revolves around the Sun. And if you think about Leo in its worst extreme, it's kind of like everything revolves around Leo. If they're not getting that attention that they feel they deserve, or that maybe that they actually do deserve for the contributions that they're making and for the role that they're playing in their lives, then they're going to become very dramatic. They're going to be like having a temper tantrum. They're going to make sure that they are the center of attention. Just as the Sun is the center of the solar system, everything revolves around the Sun. So think about that in terms of like the like a monarchy, right? What does everything revolve around? It revolves around the king. The king is the center of that hierarchy, that monarchy. And so it's a very similar energy, right? And if the king isn't getting what the king wants, then the king is going to throw a tantrum and like, you know, off with their head or whatever it is that the king is going to do.
Yeah, sure. Love that. So one thing that I've kind of observed about Leo people as well is I kind of split them into two. Like I think it's like with all signs, you get kind of one extreme to the other.
Yeah.
But because I meet a lot of Leos and they're like, well, I'm not showy, I'm not I'm not into performance and stuff. And I always say
they always are though, even if
right?
I think they're not.
You're pouting right now. Yeah, for sure. And I always say to them, there's kind of, and when I think of kings and that kind of leonine energy, you know, there's like that almost like an air of natural dignity to them.
Yeah.
Like that's, I call it like the Leo silent dignity. You've got the Leo ascendants like me that were performing arts kids and wild and, you know, all the rest of it. And then you have those ones that are, they're a bit more quiet, but you can tell that they have that sort of silent dignity about them.
Absolutely. It's kind of like that regal energy where you want to follow them. And that's like, it's kind of like that benevolent king energy, as opposed to like the self-centered, like, you know, temper tantrum king. Like there can be a whole spectrum of energy there, right? And that's what I'm talking about too with like in childhood, people who have more of that like regal energy with the Leo, they tend to be given these positions of authority. They tend to be looked at as an authority figure way before they have the experience to back that up, because they just carry that energy. Like you naturally just trust them. And that's actually especially a second decan Leo thing, because that's the Sagittarius decan. And so it's like the philosopher king. There's like a wisdom to that energy that isn't carried with the, you know, first decan, which is just Leo, which is more like that theater kid energy potentially that you were talking about, or that Aries energy, which is more like a little bit less leading by example and a little bit more like telling people what they want and telling people what to do. So there can be a variation on that energy. And that's probably part of what you're picking up on, in addition to obviously like planetary placements and planetary alignments that can alter that too. Like if they have a Jupiterian energy with their Leo, then that's going to be more like that benevolent, like, you know, regal, like I'm not showing off necessarily, but I know things.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So, and the other thing that I know about Leo that really kind of hits home with this card, when you think about like that strength and the silent dignity, the authority, the energy of, like you said, you know, maybe coming through, you know, being given all of this responsibility at a place or a moment in your life where you aren't ready for it, but you just have to rise to the occasion, or you have to rise to the challenge. I think of the strength card and, you know, the whole motif with that as well. Kind of like with the Leonine sort of hero's journey as well, like that, you know, they go through something that requires an insane feat of strength or courage inside to face something that is bigger than you, or to see something that is bigger than you. And I've seen the strength card show up for so many people before a surgery, you know, when they're like, you know, is this going to go well? Am I going to be all right? Is it, you know, and it's like that moment where the card kind of says to them, have strength, have courage, know that you're going to be all right, but you have to go through this. The same with people that are, you know, on physical journeys of healing as well, and even, you know, physical changes that they want to make to their bodies. So, you know, like maybe working out or, you know, beautifying yourself, but there needing to be that strength to get through it, or that endurance. So, with that, I kind of see the hero's journey almost like intrinsic with the card and with the sign, because it's like going for something that you know is bigger than you, but you have to find that sort of inner courage to face it or to see it through.
Yeah, absolutely. Or even the inner courage to like put yourself out there. I think that's a big thing with the Leo energy too, because Leo is kind of a prideful energy and they don't do well with criticism and things like that. And so for a lot of people who have strong Leo energy, and everybody has it in some place in their chart, there's a need to put yourself out there. There's a need to be seen. There's a need to be recognized for the gifts and talents in that area. But there can be a hesitation. There is this need to gather strength and gather courage in order to move forward, in order to put yourself out there. And so like for an example, for me, I have Leo on my midheaven. And so that's my career. That's my public image. And for a very long time, I wouldn't even show my face like on my Facebook page for my business or on my website or anything like that. I didn't want to be seen at all. But then I realized Leo's on my midheaven, right? People have to see me. They have to know who I am. I have to like put myself out there. And I started doing videos, right? And that's when things started to work a lot better. So you have to kind of look to that, and everybody has it in some area of their chart too. And I think that's part of that courage energy. And the other thing too, I wanted to ask you about, because Leo, I love Leos, like some of my favorite signs, some of my favorite people are Leos, Leo risings. You're a Leo rising, works great, you know? And one of the things I love about Leo is that not just the authenticity and this like open-hearted energy, but the fact that they tend to be just very generous. They're generous with their energy. They're generous with their time. They're just generous in general. Sometimes it's generosity to show off if it's kind of on that extreme, but a lot of times it's just this authentic need to, or this authentic desire to connect to someone in this heartfelt way, and to give and to provide in whatever way that they can. It's that fatherly energy, right? That's Leo is the father, the sun is the father in astrology. And so does the strength card have any connection to that generosity, would you say?
Yes, absolutely. The strength card can literally, I mean, when it shows up, it can show that as well, where especially in certain spreads, if you see this in a certain position in one of the Tree of Life spreads, it's a person that has tremendous heart or tremendous courage. This can show that somebody that's very protective of people that can't necessarily protect themselves. It can show up like that in a lot of ways. It can really very often show that somebody is just all heart. You know, like they lead with this, they might not necessarily put too much thought behind it, but they're totally there on a heart space level. Very open, very warm, very giving. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it can show you where somebody's heart space energy is to their detriment. So yeah, absolutely.
That makes sense. Yeah. And so in what context would it be to their detriment? Like they're giving too much?
Yes, where they're giving too much, or where maybe, like you mentioned earlier, they're being too emotional. they're putting too much of this in it, and it's, you know, like it's almost like tarot saying it's not that deep. You know, just get back from it. It's not that, you know, you don't have to be that attached to it, or you don't have to put that much of your person into the experience that you're having.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
All right, so I think we've covered the strength card pretty well, and Leo, it's been great. There is one thing that I have to ask. I'm sure there's loads of people out there that are going to say this. I'm a Leo ascendant, and clearly there's something a little bit missing. So Leo and the hair, what's that all about?
Leo and the hair. So there are two different types of Leo energy with the hair, and usually with men, you'll get, a lot of times with men, you'll get both. So they have notable hair. It's not always that their hair is wild and wacky and colorful. There's always something very noticeable about their hair, and they do tend to have maybe a fixation with their hair and with their mane. With men, though, I have seen many, many, many times that they tend to go bald. They tend to go bald early, and they tend to lose their hair. And men who have long hair too, who like so many Leo, I see this so often, like Leo and Leo rising men who had these really long like manes that were just really luxurious, they'll go bald, and then there'll be that guy that has like no hair on top and then like a ponytail. Like that is, you know, that person is probably a Leo or a Leo rising. Sorry, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just something that I have definitely noticed.
Yeah, no, that is, oh, that's brilliant. That's really made me chuckle. So true as well. As a young man, I had really long hair, and I had like afro hair, so it was like big and it was wild, and I was always doing something with it. But yeah, like now, not so much. But yeah, that's great. Thank you for clarifying that. So is that like, especially with an ascendant Leo, or
especially with an ascendant Leo, but I mean, Leo sun signs, same thing. I've seen that a lot. It's either they'll keep their hair and it'll be like glorious until they're older, or, you know, it'll be really glorious. And then a lot of times they'll just try to keep it exactly the same way it was, even though there's like way less of it and it doesn't work well. What you've done, I think, is much better, and it looks really good.
Oh, brilliant. Listen, Heather, as always, I've had an absolute blast. Thank you for bringing all of your amazing knowledge. Again, please tell people where they can find you.
Oh yeah, astrologywithheather.com, or you can head on over to my YouTube channel, also Astrology with Heather. And yeah, thank you so much for doing this. I'm excited for next week when we'll do the Hermit.
Absolutely. And that's going to be your card, right? Because you're a Virgo. So,
apparently.
We're delving into it. Yeah, so please check out Heather's channel. If you haven't subscribed as well, please make sure you do, because we are going to swap them. So we alternate every week. If you want to see the whole series, you're going to have to be part of both channels. With that said, I wish you all an abundance of all of that good stuff. Have a fantastic time. Take care, and we'll see you soon.